rapid transformation of the Gambian cashew industry. For GRTS News, I am Abdullah Baji.
We'll be back momentarily with news from outside the Gambia. Welcome back. The presidents of Sudan and South Sudan have agreed to resume full diplomatic relations following a period of skirmishes and at one point near full-scale war between the two countries. Khartoum and Juba are pushing to put behind them the frequent bad blood which existed between the two countries since South Sudan gained independence in 2011. On a rare visit to Juba, Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir spoke of the need for the two countries to step up efforts to normalize relations. We have details of that story in this report.
Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir arrived in South Sudan on Friday, his first visit since the fledgling nation declared independence 2 years ago. He was met by South Sudanese President Salva Kiir. The two leaders have agreed to normalize diplomatic relations, which broke down last year and brought the two countries to the brink of war.
People will see something new. Our relations are improving every day. We can expect a visit from Salva Kiir in the near future to assure people that this new relationship has been established, that it is thriving, and that the situation will never return to what it was.
Although it was President Bashir's first visit to South Sudan since independence, it was his fourth meeting with President Kiir in the space of 6 months. At the last meeting, held in March, President Kiir agreed to resume oil exports to Sudan. When it became independent, South Sudan took nearly 3/4 of Sudan's oil production. At the peak of tensions last year, South Sudan shut down exports to Sudan. But there is still disagreement over a 2,000-kilometer border and the disputed Abyei province. South Sudan's president said the time had come for dialogue and fulfillment of the terms of the agreement signed last year.
We have agreed to the following: full resumption of border trade and free movement of people and goods across our borders. Improvement of security along our borders.
But territorial disputes, border demarcation, and pipeline fees will no doubt figure in future talks.
Ivory Coast has deployed another detachment of armed security men along its common border with Liberia. There have been reports of general insecurity in the area as armed men continue to terrorize the civilian population. Addressing troops in the region, the Ivorian Chief of Staff, Soumaila Bakayoko, says the Ivorian Army will strengthen its presence along their common border with Liberia. We have details of that story in the CFI report.
There are regular attacks by armed groups in western Cote d'Ivoire, and safety is a major concern along the 400-kilometer border with Liberia.
Our bags are always packed. We're always running at night. We can't even sleep. We find dead people in the village. We don't know what to do. We're all scattered about now. We're tired from the war.
13 people were killed in the last 2 attacks and thousands have fled. People from Burkina Faso moved onto land abandoned by those who fled to Liberia during the crisis in 2011, and this has caused much of the violence.
You go onto land that doesn't belong to you and you work. When someone asks you who sold it to you, you answer, we don't really know who it was.
The Ivorian Army has doubled its number of troops in the west to secure the region. There are now 600 soldiers with more vehicles and communications equipment.
Our presence there will be much more visible, and with the means of transportation that we've been given, we will be patrolling everywhere. We'll be visible everywhere to prevent anyone from harming other people.
Cote d'Ivoire's Army Chief of Staff visited the Western Forest region for 3 days. He was there to encourage and inspect his troops on the ground.
China and the United States say they will work together to persuade North Korea to give up its nuclear program. The two global powers made this pledge during a meeting between U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and China's top diplomat. Tension continues to mount on the Korean peninsula as Pyongyang intensifies its provocative threats of attacking South Korea and U.S. targets in the region. More in this piece.
On Saturday, China pledged to work with the United States to resolve the nuclear crisis with North Korea, which has threatened Washington with war. Beijing assured the U.S. that it would work to convince Pyongyang to refrain from carrying out further nuclear missile tests. The announcement comes as U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry was on a visit to the region in which he met with Chinese officials. China is Pyongyang's only ally, and Kerry had earlier pressed Beijing to play a more active role in diffusing tensions.
We very much look forward to building on what the President described to me as the potential of a new model, a model relationship. Obviously, this is a critical time in the region, as well as in the world.
Decades of practice after the establishment of Chinese-U.S. diplomatic relations has proven that our common interest is far more important than our disputes. In addition, as big countries, China and the U.S. have a responsibility to maintain the peace and stability of the region and the world.
But North Korea's war rhetoric continues to threaten peace and stability in the region. North Korean state television has just announced the creation of a minister of the atomic energy industry, perhaps further heightening tensions. Pyongyang has also threatened Japan with nuclear war, and Tokyo is taking North Korea's rhetoric very seriously. Japan deployed Patriot defense missiles around its capital this week in anticipation of a missile launch by North Korea.
Just how far will this go?
Please, ask North Korea that question.
But that laughter may be just hiding a growing concern in Japan. And John Kerry will head to Tokyo after leaving China on Sunday.
We'll go for another break. We'll be back. Welcome back. Football delegates have voted in favor of the GFA draft constitution Saturday morning in the second adoptive Congress at the Friendship Hotel. 27 delegates out of the 48 who attended the Congress voted yes to adopt the draft constitution, as opposed to 20 delegates who voted no. The result was announced to the waiting journalist by Omar C., Vice Chairman of the GFA Normalizing Committee, shortly after the end of the Congress. Here is an excerpt of what he has to say to the press. We'll apologize for the lack of audio in that sport excerpt. We'll now shift our attention to the weather report courtesy of the Central Forecast Office. We'll go with the recap. Before we go, this is the reminder of our headlines. Thousands have descended on Kanilai to celebrate events marking the end of independence festivities and the ruling APRC party's landslide victory in the local government elections. Football delegates have narrowly adopted the GFA draft constitution amid serious polarization in charging a way forward for Gambian football. Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir has made a symbolic visit to South Sudan less than a year after Khartoum and Juba barely avoided full-scale war, and China and the United States have intensified efforts to talk North Korea out of its nuclear program, but tension on the Korean peninsula shows no signs of cooling off. That's all in this newscast. Thanks for the pleasure of your company, and stay tuned to GRTS and enjoy our programs. Meanwhile, see you at 10 p.m. for another news bulletin.